first on 4, The Truth About Killing, which has got strong language, violent scenes and footage of warfare. Grub Smith will be online for a live web chat right after the show.
Last week, I began my journey into the world of killing and combat. I'd always assumed that if there was a war, I'd sign up, and with a bit of basic training, I'd have no problem killing the enemy. And who can blame me? It's what most men think they'd do if the time came.
If someone was pointing a gun at me, I'd shoot them, yeah. Definitely.
Especially if they're shooting at you, it's a bit easier to shoot back, wouldn't it?
But after World War II, the Americans revealed the incredible truth. In battle, only 15% of troops were willing to fire at the enemy. Discovering that combat soldiers weren't shooting the enemy sent a shockwave through the military machine.
You're there to push your bayonet through his face, through his skull and out the back of his head.
They needed to make men into killers. They needed to discover the truth about killing. When I began making this programme, I guess I was like most blokes. If it came to the crunch, I thought, I'll be able to do my bit. Pull the trigger. Another. But as I discovered for myself last week, extensive research by modern armies and military psychologists has now shown that the reality is rather different. In fact, when American military psychiatrists carried out tests, they found that only 2% of us, the psychopaths, were really any good at killing. For everyone else, the 98%, killing remains an extremely difficult, unnatural act. So I'd assume that to a modern army, an average bloke like me would be as good as useless. But the statistics tell a different story. If in World War II only 15% were firing, by Korea it was 50%. And by the time British forces retook the Falklands, it stood at a near-perfect 95%. For thousands of years, armies had used drill, discipline and demonisation of the enemy to spur their warriors on. The Germans were portrayed as rapists, the Bolsheviks subhuman monsters. But when it came to the moment of truth, even hate couldn't make men kill. However, in the last 50 years, modern armies have overcome man's natural resistance to taking life. They've managed to turn ordinary men into killers, and I wanted to find out how they'd done it. Getting the answer has taken me into the world of modern military training. I've spoken with the experts and seen how men are taught to kill. It's a journey that's taken me thousands of miles, but I found the evidence for the first part of the story rather closer to home. This is the Little Hart Military Archive in King's College, London. From Baghdad right the way back to the Boer War, they've got a record of pretty much everything military. Of course, most of it is straightforward accounts of battles and campaigns, but in one corner of the building there lurks evidence of a far, far stranger story. By 1950, Britain and America were at war again, this time in Korea. Now that the Cold War's over, it's hard to imagine just how much fear the West's new enemy, communism, generated. But back in the 50s, and to Americans in particular, the Red Menace was truly terrifying. It looked like the communists had perfected brainwashing and mind control techniques. This archive of an American prisoner of war held in Korea shows him making a so-called confession.
How can I go back and face my family? In a civilized world, how can I tell them these things, that I am a criminal in the eyes of humanity?
It seemed the communists had brainwashed him. The question now, what could Western scientists come up with in return? In these boxes are thousands of once secret CIA and US Army documents, and in them, 3 letters keep cropping up. LSD. Long before any hippie had ever even heard of acid, the US Army had been busy testing the drug on its soldiers.
I can't remember a thing. I can't remember. Come on, man, I don't want this stuff.
It destroyed the aggressive impulse and totally disorientated whoever took it. The research met with some success, but there was one major problem. How do you give acid to the enemy? Frustrated, the scientists shifted their attention elsewhere. Instead of turning the enemy into pacifists, could they make their own soldiers more bloodthirsty and violent? PCP, or angel dust, gives the user a sense of superhuman strength. Perhaps this was the key to making men kill.
How do you feel?
I feel pretty good, sir.
Do you? Are you cold?
No, I'm not cold at all.
Are you tired?
No, I'm not tired. Well, I could run.
You could do some more, could you?
Yes, sir. I could run. I run 100 miles right now.
Is that right?
That's right.
But once again, the results were less than spectacular.
So it's true that the chemical soldier will feel no fear. He'll also feel no love. He'll also feel no compassion. He will be akin to the sociopathic personality. So if a friend of his is shot in the face, he'll feel no anger. If he sees an orphanage struck by a bomb, he'll feel no remorse.
So if the drugs didn't work, where did the answer lie? Desperate for results, the scientists changed the focus of their research. If 98% of men were horrified by killing, then perhaps the answer lay in forcing them to confront the thing they feared the most. In these once secret documents are details of another parallel research program. Its goal? To make the perfect killer. Most of the references here are fleeting, and they refer to unsuccessful attempts to use hypnotism to make people kill. But in 1975, details of something truly extraordinary began to emerge.
It was nicknamed the Clockwork Orange because of its similarity to a scene in the notorious Stanley Kubrick movie.
So, with a certain amount of trepidation, I've decided to give it a go. I don't know what the soldiers who had this done to them felt like, but I am really quite nervous. Details of the experiment were accidentally leaked at a 1975 NATO conference by the US military psychologist Colonel Narut. He had been trying to create the perfect assassin. As the story hit the papers, Colonel Narut simply disappeared, and no one has traced him to this day. Few details of his methods remain, but there are just enough to recreate his sick experiment.
This is freaky.
Using prisoners as his subjects, Narut wanted to completely erase man's deep-seated biological aversion to violence. So he clamped their eyes open, locked their head in a vice, and forced them to watch hour after hour of ever more brutal images. No records of whether the experiment actually worked ever emerged, so it was down to me to find out.
Oh, man alive.
For TV, these images have been censored.
Oh, Jesus, just shooting.
But I was exposed to the full grim spectacle. I felt sick. My pulse sank and the alarm sounded as my blood pressure dropped dangerously low.
Oh, man, it's just... Jesus Christ.
I thought I'd seen everything, but this was real killing.
Oh. It's over.
Get him out, I think.
The video had affected me deeply, but it was not the effect the military would have wanted. If they thought that trying to desensitise soldiers to violence was the way to get troops to kill, then in my opinion at least, they were way, way off the mark.
You know, obviously you can't grow up without thinking war is ghastly, war is hell, as Sherman said. But, you know, you can kid yourself that for patriotic and moral reasons, sometimes war is right and necessary. You know, but after watching something like that, you know, it would have to be something pretty bad for me to want it, to get a gun and go and fight. You know, it sounds awful, but if I'd had to watch that and then someone had said the next minute, we're off to fight Hitler, I'd have to think twice about whether it was right to fight Hitler. And that is fucking amazing.